Let's consider George and Lee's response to Peter Singer's views on abortion. Here at the outset, let me just say it's what George and Lee say about Singer is perhaps somewhat unexpected, not in the sense that they say something, crazy or weird or anything like that, but in the sense that it's not how you would think you would object to someone like Singer's views on abortion. George and Lee are going to attack some kinds of a kind of metaphysical assumption that Singer seems to be making. Um, the more kind of common or expected types of responses that George and Lee are going to give to pro-choice positions are going to come later. The kind of response that you might expect them to give to Singer, they don't. It'll come later. There will be material later that could be marshaled as a response to Singer. But strictly speaking, what we're about to see, this is how they respond to Singer. So let's see what they have to say. So let's give, we got our timeline back there, right, of fetal development and so on. You got your embryo there at the beginning, and we'll have our favorite baby bounce onto the picture. And look, that's not just any baby. That is a person baby. That's a baby that's thinking about itself, right? That's what that means there. And so that baby, in as much as it can think about itself, right, what that's supposed to signify is that that baby's a person, that baby is rational and self-aware, self-conscious. It's aware of itself as itself. And if you recall what Singer had argued, he thought that self-awareness could come as early as a month. And so he's willing to kind of put the personhood line, so to speak, at a month. And so Singer is going to say that so this is how George and Lee understand Singer's position, right? That's what I'm going to be describing now. So according to George and Lee, Singer claims that you begin to exist at about a month. You are simply the kind of self-consciousness or self-awareness that inhabits a body. George and Lee call it a kind of dualism. And if you've taken some psychology, or if you've taken philosophy in persons, that word dualism might make sense to you. If you haven't, don't worry about it. It doesn't really matter. But the idea there would be, according to George and Lee, Singer has this view according to which your body is like one thing and you are something like your mind, right, which is immaterial, which is kind of hooked up to your body, say, but it's not just your body. It's this consciousness, this self-consciousness. That's you. You are not your body, something like that, right? That's how George and Lee interpret Singer. Singer never lays it out like that. This is why this is a little bit odd, I think, or a little bit confusing. Singer this isn't how he describes his own views. But nonetheless, that's how George and Lee are interpreting it. So you only come to exist once you're a self-aware baby, once you're a baby thinking about yourself, right? That's when you are there. Prior to that, at birth, that's not you. That's just some organism or whatever. That's not you. That's just a bunch of cells arranged human-wise or something. I don't know. It's not you, though, right? That's how George and Lee interpret Singer. What comes into existence back at conception? Well, Singer is willing to say that's when the human being comes into existence. Recall that Singer made this distinction between two different senses of human being, right? We might talk about human being in the sense of member of the species Homo sapiens, and we might talk about it in the sense of person. Well, what I've pointed to on this line, this development line, are those two senses, right? The person comes to exist at a month. Singer, according to George and Lee, think you are a person. But the human organism, what I call the human being here, right? The human organism, the member of the species Homo sapiens, that comes to exist at conception. And so according to Singer, you are not a human organism. You are not essentially a human organism, because look, that human organism comes to exist back at conception, but you only come to exist at some later point, right? And so that's a sign that you are not identical with a human organism. You are not identical with, the way George and Lee put it, a physical organism. George and Lee thinks that's false. That's where Singer goes wrong. Singer's got this weird view of persons, and in particular of what you are, of personal identity. So Singer doesn't think you are a physical organism. Singer thinks you are this kind of consciousness, this self-consciousness, this sufficiently developed consciousness or something. And George and Lee, in their response to Singer, so what exactly is the response? They say that's wrong. Okay, fine. But then they give an argument. And we're not going to worry really about the details of his argument. It's kind of beside the point for our purposes. But this is all that stuff. They talk about how you might judge that that is a tree. Yeah, so you're looking at a tree and you judge, you know, that is a tree. According to George and Lee, that this is a sign that you are a physical organism because you are making that judgment and you are seeing that that is a tree, and seeing is a physical thing. And so if it's a physical thing that you're doing, well, that means you're a physical thing. That's their movement of thought. But there's also this act of understanding, knowing that it's a tree, applying that concept. And so, according to George and Lee, what this all shows is that one and the same subject is both perceiving, engaging in that bodily action, and thinking about treeness, engaging in that intellectual action. Don't worry if you don't follow that argument. What George and Lee are arguing for very, very quickly is a particular view of personal identity. It's one of the views out there in what is called the philosophy of mind. If you're interested in questions like that, what is a person? What does personal identity consist in? Am I just a physical organism, an animal of a particular sort, or am I my mind, or am I, or whatever? So those kinds of questions. That's philosophy of mind. And occasionally in the philosophy department here, you'll find a class in the philosophy of mind. George and Lee are arguing for their particular view in the philosophy of mind, and they see Singer as putting forward a false view in the philosophy of mind. And they're saying Singer's view is kind of infected. Singer's view on abortion is infected with this false view in the philosophy of mind. Okay, fine. So that's basically how the argument works. If you don't understand that stuff about the tree, don't worry about it. I'm not going to ask you about the tree argument or anything like that. That's why I haven't even put it up there on the screen for you. The only point that I really want to draw out of this, out of the reply to Singer, is that it hinges on differences over the philosophy of mind. And the philosophy of mind is a kind of sub-discipline of philosophy that has been around as long as philosophy has been around. The questions within the philosophy of mind are as perennial and ever present and as as perennial as any other of the big questions you might find. Why is this the thing I want to draw out? What's important about this? Who cares? Well, the one point I want to make is George and Lee's response to Singer, their difference, the difference that they identify between their own position and Singer's. You might think, well, yeah, George and Lee, they're pro-life, Singer's pro-choice. That's a pretty big difference. Well, what this reveals is that difference is even deeper. It's even harder to bridge than it may have seemed at first glance. Because what's really dividing George and Lee from Singer are these huge basic questions about the philosophy of mind. And so it seems like if George and Lee are going to if they're going to rationally persuade Singer that Singer is wrong, about abortion, they are first going to have to rationally persuade Singer about the philosophy of mind. They're going to have to rationally resolve these issues in the philosophy of mind. And given that these questions and issues have been with us for literally thousands of years, the chances of them doing that are very small, right? And so the point that I want to draw is not that George and Lee are wrong, or that Singer is wrong, or that George and Lee are right, or the Singer, or anything like that. The point that I want to emphasize now, and that we're going to be seeing more of now as we proceed, as we've gotten more of this material on the table, more of this material about abortion. These differences, differences over abortion are kind of on the surface and they seem really bad. But what's underlying those differences are even deeper differences, deeper divides, right? And so rational resolution of the abortion issue, this just makes it look even harder. Like, it's going to be even more difficult to rationally resolve the abortion debate, given that, according to George and Lee at least, you first have to rationally resolve the philosophy of mind.